But when I go and try and share it, like with my personal stuff, if I go and try and put it on the guest is on my friends list. Uh, so I was going to share it on her timeline to kind of get confirmation, but she actually said I had it set at 5, and she actually said that that was too late in the day. So 11, theoretically we'll get started around 11, but when I go to share it, it still says the original time that I posted, but I'm not going to worry about it now. It's 4 days away. Maybe I'll try and post it around midnight or something, but at least it's on here. You guys can see it, the 1 or 2 of you that are watching the stream. So enough of that, enough of this. Stop recording. I guess we're still recording. Is there anything else we need out of this? How many tabs we got open? Is there anything else? Just bookkeeping. I actually went to Google Domains to check. What was I checking on? I wanted to see if there's actually a domain I've been trying to keep an eye on, and I don't think it's the one I got. I went there to check on something else, and while I was trying to think of what it was, I think another one popped in my head. A customer had requested a URL nearly a year ago, and when we looked it up, somebody else had taken Dominion over it. Somebody else had claimed it, and we couldn't use it. I kept trying to tell him, that was a hard thing to get the .com you wanted, but I keep thinking he could change the name of his business if he wanted to, or we could come up with a different, like a dot afterwards. They do it's a local business here. They do pressure washing. Oh, pressure washing. I get made fun of throwing a R in there with my southern accent. So pressure washing. I don't hear the difference, but I get made fun of for saying washing instead of washing. Wash, no R, washing. Anyways, point being, I just said we'd do that sometime in the first week of October. That gives us about 3 weeks to the date and time is tentative on that, and then another one we're going to try and do I've always wanted to do an online comic book, and she's got a pirate story. We're going to try maybe a little steampunk or something, but I can sketch alright by hand, but I'm more of a digital artist. I like being able to play around with chalk and oil paints, and then just turn the computer off and not have to wash my hands so much. I mean, I'll wash my hands, but there's no real cleanup. You don't have to soak your brushes in alcohol and wipe them down. You can get pretty realistic textures out of pixels anymore. So that's just kind of become my thing as a graphic artist. I do more computer visual work. So that's, and they kind of call that a unicorn. I guess this show's a step in that direction, to be creative and technical at the same time. So anyways, the point being, sometime Sunday, 11ish, she's going to come by. She's going to help, so I don't have to do all the repetitive, redundant work. I'm going to show her a basic template we can use for a comic book. I'm thinking just 640 by 480 with a layer for text, and then maybe a layer for backgrounds, and then I'll show her how to look through for some like image commons like we just did, and I'll show her how to look through SketchUp. We'll get into SketchUp a little bit. I've had her looking for models she wants to use, so we'll look for like some pirate boats or pirate ships that are in the open source public license area, and we'll export those and use them as layers in GIMP. We'll set up our scene. So if she's writing about a pirate, we'll put a pirate in the scene, and we'll crop him and trim him and layer him and color him, and we'll do whatever we got time to do there and make our comic book. So that's 2 events we got scheduled coming up, with not hard times, but definitely events scheduled. Just whenever I work from my home office, so whenever, and the guests are friends of mine, I do business with people I know, so whenever it's convenient for the customer to show up, sit down here in the studio and work with me in the office, we'll crack open the computer and get on the internet and throw some pixels around and try and make them happy. So that being said, what's next? We're still on the clock. Let's go ahead and clock in. Actually, I'm going to hit stop recording. Stop recording. We'll leave the stream up. We've been live for 2.5 hours. We're at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Kind of adding a layer of being a DJ here. I like that. I think we're just going to keep reading Chapter 8. That's what I've been promising here. Chapter 8, CRUD apps. I think we're still on Moongoose, Express, and CRUD here with our book. Our overlay, yeah, it's still up. So let's just read on. Using, here I'll start recording and stop recording. Okay. We're recording a new one starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Using the HTTP client. In Chapter 7, Introduction to Angular, we mentioned the HTTP client as a means of communication between the Angular 2 application and your backend API. Since the REST architecture is well structured, it would be quite easy to implement a service for our Angular module, which will provide to our components with an API in order to communicate with the server. Reactive programming. You might have heard about reactive programming, or you might have not. Your cat is either alive or dead. That is a fact. Possibly the most logical fact you've heard all day. You might have heard about reactive programming, or you might have not. But the easiest way to understand it is to realize that it's all about tracking asynchronous data that is changing over time, and that the way it does this is by using observables. Observables are a stream of data that can be observed by one or multiple observers. An observable emits values over time and notifies the subscribed observers with a new value, an error, or a completion event. A visual representation of this mechanism can be seen in the following figure. Value change, value change, value change, error, value change, completion. It almost feels philosophical. Value change, value change, value change, error, value change, completion. In this diagram, you can see that the observables keep emitting value changes. An error, another value change, and then a completion event. When the observable finishes its life cycle, reactive programming might seem complicated, but fortunately the Reactive X Library allows us to deal with observables in a very simple way. Note, it is recommended that you continue reading about reactive programming since it's rapidly becoming a dominant approach to modern web application development. It is recommended, but there's no link here, is there? So you gotta do a search. You gotta find your own information on reactive programming, which I guess React is kind of a version of. We'll do this. Here's the Wikipedia. Introduction to Reactive Programming. Oh, GitHub. Really good read. The only one you need, D-Zone. Reactive X an Introduction to Reactive Programming. It's Code World. Red Elastic. Dan Liu. I don't know what Dan knew, but certainly Dan Liu. The Reactive Manifesto.org. Notes on Reactive Programming Part 1. So all that's worth looking into at some point. Reactive Programming. Let's do we'll bookmark that. And for now, I'm going to put it into React. I know it's different. I'm sure it's different, but I'm also sure there's some kind of correlation. It's probably like named after this. It's probably either based on it or named after it, or there's a correlation, even if they're not directly the same thing. Okay, so I don't know that I want to check this, but yeah, this is a short page. There's nothing real. There's no like instructions here. I'm reluctant to check some pages off. So let's go ahead and look at the Reactive X Library. I think that was another short read. Yeah, you can tell by the bar. That's a short read. So we'll review this one and then try and take another set break if we have to. It's just a lot to read at once. That's probably the most challenging part of this job. That's why I took a break and did some of that other stuff. Some PR, some customer communications, some booking of guests, organizing of concepts and projects, developing workflows. So the Reactive X Library. The Reactive Library is a cross-platform library that uses the observer pattern to help developers manage asynchronous data changes over time. Simply put, Reactive X is a library that allows us to create and manipulate observable objects. In Angular 2 projects, we use the Reactive JS library, which is basically a JavaScript version of the Reactive library. If you look closely at the previous chapter, you'll be able to see that we already set it up and even used it in our authentication service. We did that by installing it using Node Package Manager. We imported it in our entities as follows. We had to do this because the Angular team chose to use observables quite extensively, and one of our first encounters with it was using the HTTP client. That's basically the way we work with HTTP client. The HTTP client offers various methods to handle different HTTP requests. What's up with that? Ain't no big deal. It's just the way we work with that. Request URL options. This method allows us to perform any HTTP request defined by the options object. Get performs a get request. Post performs a post request. Put performs a put request. And delete performs a delete request. That's your CRUD right there. Create, read, no. Create, read, update, delete. All these methods return a post observable object that can be subscribed or manipulated. An important thing to notice is that the HTTP client always returns a cold observable. This means that the request itself will not be sent until someone subscribes to the observable. In the next section, you'll learn how to use the HTTP client to communicate with your Express API. Implementing the Angular module. I expect this one to be a little bit longer. Yeah, so. Alright, we'll take a brief break. I'll read through this. I don't think it's going to say stop recording. We're only at 11 minutes. I don't need a long break. I just want to step away and touch my toes for a second. I'll read that. Just give me a second. Still this episode. We're only at 11 minutes, so give me like a minute or two. I'll just get a seat. Still turn the camera off. I just got my seat. I feel better now. I've been standing for pretty much all yesterday and today. That's a little different. With the camera off, I can change it up. I can sit down for the rest of this episode. That'll give me 15 minutes sitting down. That'll be good. You can just arrow down through this. I'll say we're still on this episode. I'll take that title card back off. Alright, here we go. Implementing the Angular module. The second part of your CRUD module is the Angular module. This module, arrows aren't working. There we go. Implementing the Angular module. You know what? Should I throw this in my notes? Not yet. I haven't really got. I'm just going to keep reviewing. It's easier this way. The second part of your CRUD module is the Angular module. This module will contain an Angular service that will communicate with the Express API using the HTTP client. An Angular article component that will contain 4 subcomponents with a set of templates that provide your users with an interface to perform CRUD operations. Before you begin creating your Angular entities, let's first create the initial module structure. Go to your application's public app folder and create a new folder named articles. In this new folder, create the module file named articles module and paste the following lines of code. As you can see, we simply imported the modules we needed from the Angular packages. Core, common, forms, router, articles routes from articles routes, articles component, create component, list component, view component, edit component. Next, we created a new Angular module that imports the Angular modules in our routing configuration as a child router and then declares our new module components. Now we can continue by creating our main component file. To do that, create a file named articles component TypeScript inside your public app folder and paste the following lines of code. Router outlet, import articles service from article service at component selector articles template providers export class. In this file we imported the basic Angular modules and the article service we'll shortly create. We then created a new component that uses router outlet and injects our service. Next, we'll need to create a routing configuration for our articles component. To do that, create a file named article routes TypeScript and paste the following lines of code. Articles, create, list, view, edit. Exports, articles, children path, list, create, view, edit. As you can see, we simply created a routing configuration for our component and its subcomponents. The code should be familiar since it resembles the authentication routing we implemented in the previous chapter. Moreover, in our update and view paths, we defined a URL parameter in the form of a colon followed by the name of our parameter, in this case the article ID parameter. Okay, Bert. Next, you'll need to import our articles module in our application module configuration. To do that, go back to your public app module TypeScript file and change it as follows. Oh, there's more. So I don't really see anything highlighted. Let's get inside that window and go down it's the articles module. That looks a little highlighted. Home module, is that new? I think they just added the articles module. This concludes the configuration of our new module. Now we can move on to creating our module entities. We'll begin with our module service. Creating the Angular module service. In order for your CRUD module to easily communicate with the API endpoints, it is recommended that you use a single Angular service that will utilize the HTTP client methods. To do that, go to your public app articles folder and create a new file named articles service TypeScript with the following lines of code. Let's review this. First, we imported the Observable and Reactive JavaScript library module. You might notice that we import the entire library since we'll need to use various operators with our observable object, for instance the map method. Next, we imported the modules we needed from the Angular library and created our injectable service using the @injectable decorator. Our service has one property to hold our API base URL and a constructor to inject the HTTP client. It contains an error handling method that deals with server errors. Our other methods are quite easy to understand. Create, read, update, delete. List. Yep. There's our CRUD. 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 Create, read, update, delete. Quite easy to understand. Accepts an article object and sends it to the server using an HTTP post request. Accepts an article ID string and asks for an article object from the server using an HTTP request. Update accepts an article object and sends it to the server for an update using an HTTP put request. Delete accepts an article ID string and tries to delete it using an HTTP delete request. List request for an array of article objects using the HTTP get request list. So we laid the groundwork to make it easy now. Begin by creating a new folder named Create inside your public app articles folder. In this folder, create a new file named Create Component TypeScript and paste the following code. Create this articles service. Create this article, subscribe, created article, This router navigate articles, create article ID, error, this error message error. Let's review this. We started by importing the modules we need from the Angular library along with our article service. Then we created our component with an empty article and error message objects. Note how our component's constructor injects the router and our articles services. Then we created a create method that uses article service to create a new article object. In our observable subscription, we use the router service to navigate to our view components along with the newly created article ID. In case of an error, we set our component's error message property to the message. To finish up with our subcomponent, we'll need to create its template. Adding the template. The create template will provide your user with an interface to create a new article. It will contain an HTML form and it will use your component's create method to save the new article. To create your template, go to the public app articles create folder and create a new file named create template HTML. In your new file, paste the following code snippet. New article, title, content, error message, form, Angular submit, Nova, no validate, form, create no validate, label for title, input type required Angular model, article title, name title, placeholder title, content, 30 columns by 10 rows, input type submit, strong, ID error, double brackets, double curly brackets, strong ID error, error message, form. Okay, the create template contains a simple form with 2 text input fields and a submit button. The text field uses the Angular model directive to bind the user input to our component's properties. It is also important to note the Angular submit directive you placed in the form element. This directive tells Angular to call a specific component method when the form is submitted. In this case, the form submission will execute your component's create method. The last thing you should notice is the error message at the end of the form that will be shown in case of any error. Next, we're going to implement the view subcomponent. Implementing the view subcomponent. Our view subcomponent will take care of presenting a single article. Our component will also contain a set of buttons that are visible only to the article creator, which will allow the creator to delete the article or navigate to the edit route. Begin by creating a new folder named view inside your public app articles folder. In this folder, create a new file named view component TypeScript and paste the following code. We started by importing the modules we need from the Angular library along with our article service and authentication service. Then we created our component with an article property, a current user property, a params observer property, an allow edit flag, and an error message property. Note how our component's constructor injects route params in our article service and authentication services. Our constructor also sets the current user property using the authentication service instance in our Angular on init method, which is being invoked when the component is initialized. We read the article ID parameter from the route parameters, and then we use the article service to fetch an existing article. We do this using active route, which supplies us with the params observable. We unsubscribe to this observable on our component's Angular on destroy method in our observable subscription. We set the component's article property and determine whether the current user can edit the article. In case of an error, we use the router service to navigate back to our list route. Lastly, Lastly, we implemented a delete method that uses article service to delete the viewed article and go back to the article list. To finish up with our subcomponent, we'll need to create its template. Adding the template. The view template will provide your user with an interface to view an existing article. Your template will also contain a set of buttons only visible to the article creator, which will allow the creator to delete the article or navigate to the edit route. To create the template, go to Public App Articles View folder and create a new file named View Template HTML. In your new file, paste the following code snippet. We're just at 25 minutes. Got a little bit left to read, but we're making progress. I am going to take my break though. See, implementing the Angular. Both of these are short, so when we come back, we can finish this page and then get through both of these, and that'll be close to 5 o'clock. But we should have time. I'll go ahead and work a little bit late. I've had an easy day. I've not recorded a whole lot, but I'll probably break the stream up a little bit just to make it easier for whatever. Maybe I won't. But anyways, I'm gonna take my break. Mr. Eggman says it's time to stop recording. We can do our notes real quick. I always forget those. That makes it easier than anything to stay organized. It's like clocking in constantly. I'm just going to keep copying for now. Not going to be so fancy this time. It's becoming redundant and not productive. But I do see the use of title cards. That was 60. So we're about to do 61. I think that might be all I changed. We're still on chapter 8. CRUD, Mongoose Express, CRUD. What do we say? I think we got past Mongoose, what we were just talking about this chapter. So a little review here. Let's look for some keywords we can throw in there. View template. That sounds specific. Let's go for one more since we got the space to do it. It's good for now. I'm going to highlight episode. Where's it at? See, it's hard to 61. So we'll do that, and then we'll take a little snipping. Just snip a little off the top from list to list there. We'll make that our title card. There, so now it's different.